So without further ado, let's kick off this week's webinar. So thank you everyone for joining us. I know that cybersecurity remains a significant concern for really all organizations, and I think that's exemplified by the fact that we have 90 people signed up for this webinar. It's also exemplified the fact that as a consultancy, I was just totting up before this webinar, and over the last 12 months, we have run cyber exercises for leadership teams from organizations from the following sectors: airlines, media, food manufacturing, financial services, transportation, engineering, defense, professional services, logistics, retail, technology, and energy. Cyber security affects all organizations, and again, just literally looking over the last 24 hours and what's in the news, who knows what's going on that isn't in the news. Leicester City Council is having ongoing challenges with a cyber incident. More bad news appeared for them on the BBC this morning. The vet group CVS was the victim of a cyber attack a couple of days ago, and then I was reading this morning, not only has the Champions League been affected by terrorist threats, but Paris Saint-Germain was also the victim of a cyber attack on its ticketing system. So again, it just shows the diversity of organizations impacted by cyber threats. So that's why we thought it would be great to have Anthony Long join us from Nettitude LRQA. A number of you were at our conference last year at the Churchill War Rooms in London, where Anthony spoke on the subject of cybersecurity and the landscape in which you're operating. And it's, what, 8 months since that conference, and sadly, the cyber criminals are always trying to keep one step ahead, so we thought it was time to get Anthony back to talk to you about what he and Nettitude are seeing out there. I guess there are a few people on the call that haven't met me before, so a few words about me before I hand over to Anthony to introduce himself and take you through the presentation. So I'm Jonathan Hemus. I'm the Managing Director of Insignia. Insignia is a specialist crisis management consultancy, and we work with leaders of businesses around the world to help them do and say the right things on the worst days of their business lives. And that's through crisis management planning, training, exercising, and sometimes advice. And as you've just heard, cyber security and preparing for a cyber attack and being ready for the worst to happen with regards to a cyber incident continues to be a very large part of what we do. Whilst we do also focus on everything from product recalls to environmental incidents and industrial accidents, for example, there certainly is a major focus across our client base on cyber security. So that's us. Anthony, maybe if I could ask you to introduce yourself and just briefly talk us through your background before we get into the meat of the presentation.
Sure. Thanks, Jonathan. So yeah, hello everyone. Thank you for giving me the chance to scare you with a bit of how the internet is bad, and I've obviously got a few slides on those. But in terms of myself, so I'm the Global Head of Threat Intelligence and CISO Services at LRQA Nettitude. Nettitude is a global cybersecurity service provider, as per you can see the details on the slide. So my role there is strategic, tactical and operational intelligence curation, and obviously working with multiple clients, industry verticals, and back into government, into funny shaped buildings, to obviously see how we as a consultancy and as a sort of a sounding board to government can help organizations sort of have a security posture commensurate to their threat profile, i.e. understand your threat, understand what capabilities you have, and then how you can try and defend and have a response to, you know, to those emerging threats on the ever-changing threat landscape. In terms of myself, so the sort of main tenure of my background, I'm an ex-financial services regulator. I was at the Bank of England for just under 6 years, and I was a senior cyber advisor there. working on regulation of all the institutions, organisations that the Bank of England, the PRA, the FCA regulate. And please don't hate me, but I'm one of the original architects of a lot of the tools that the regulators now use, not just in the UK, but in the ECB and obviously further afield in the rest of the world as well. As the regulators try to get a grip on cyber and understand how organisations become cyber resilient. And obviously they use various tools to get a warm and fuzzy feeling and take away a level of assurance on those organisations in terms of that they're making the right noises. And sort of previously, not on the slide there, I'm an ex-military individual, predominantly based in counter-terrorism, business continuity, early forms of cyber. Also worked in the insurance sector for kidnap and ransom, proof of life insurance and other good things of that nature, and worked in retail and other sort of government organisations as well. But as I say, yep, that's me in a nutshell. But say thank you for the opportunity, and I've got a few slides to talk about the emerging threat landscape.
Thanks, Anthony. So, yeah, Anthony's going to chat with you about what he is seeing for the next 30, 35 minutes or so. If you have questions, please use the question box on your control panel to post those. We'll probably take most of them at the end of Anthony's presentation. I might throw one or two at him as we're going through, but yeah, please do make sure you get those questions posted. I'm going to do one final bit of signposting before I hand over to Anthony, and it's simply this. I've already talked about how widespread the concern about cyber risks is. We've just completed our most recent client survey, talking to people in jobs like all of the people on this call around the world, asking them which risks are you most concerned about at the moment and what risks are your leaders most concerned about. The only risk area in which every single organisation that responded were either very concerned or concerned, 100%, was cyber. So this is clearly a topic of common and mutual interest. Anthony, I'm going to hand over to you to talk us through and say what you're seeing, and then we'll come on to maybe what you can do about it as well.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. So obviously there's multitude of areas of interest for obviously the cyber landscape, threat landscape, but I just want to tease into sort of the three areas as you can see on the slide there. So the threat landscape itself, I want to talk about sort of the themes that we're seeing and obviously what threat actors are doing and the introduction of things like AI and obviously other capabilities of that nature. I then want to talk about the sort of the common failings. So what are organizations getting wrong? Why are threat actors having success? Why are they finding it easy to obviously conduct attacks and conduct successful attacks? And then the last bit is obviously what could you do, or what are the things you need to think about, take away, and obviously make sure that you're looking at within sort of your own organization. And as Jonathan said, please do ask questions. Let's make it interactive. And Jonathan, I'll take your steer on those questions as they come up. But if I could have the next slide, please. So in terms of threat landscape, so before I concentrate on the doom and gloom in terms of why the internet's bad, I just want to say that cyber manifests in many different industries, industry verticals, and it has different, obviously, impacts, good and bad. So I just wanted to specifically tease out retail, obviously the state, and then the hacking infrastructure, as in what are we doing at the government level on a global basis to obviously counteract some of the emerging threats or existing prevailing threats as well. So if we look at retail, so I just want to concentrate and highlight that, there's a massive dependency now on shared infrastructure. And of late, we've had like fast food chains, McDonald's, and supermarkets like Tesco and Sainsbury's fell foul to a lot of bad updates, a lot of system architecture changes, and it is actually taking things offline. But what it actually highlights is the dependency on shared infrastructure, supply chain, and obviously other encountered or consumed IT services that when they are updated, it does spark a spate of outages. So they're not cyber attack related, but they do have a cyber flavor to them based on bad processes and sort of approaches to how we maintain our architecture. So obviously that's what we see, and we're currently seeing a lot of that in retail, and I imagine you've probably seen that on the news. So the outages are not believed to be related to malicious activity, more through bad planning, bad updates. But again, it does hit the news, it does hit the media, as I say, and obviously it does create questions. But as I say, it's driving the sort of reliance and highlighting the reliance on supply chain and shared infrastructure. In terms of state, the sort of one that stands out of late, and that is the French government departments that have been victims of very prolific and very sustained DDoS activity. And it's interesting, Jonathan, you mentioned the French football team, that is meant to be linked to a pro-Russian cyber outfit who are conducting sort of DDoS activity and malicious activity in France at the moment. And the reason I call that out is the French government were probably one of the few governments of late that actually admitted and acknowledging that they actually had to activate a crisis response to that activity to mitigate and obviously make sure that government departments continue to operate post those attacks. And there are attacks still ongoing. And I think what you're seeing with the French the French football team attack is they're moving away from government now, because obviously they're standing up a good response. They're countering it. The threat actor is actually looking for softer targets, and that's probably why you're seeing sort of more outages. And I imagine there will be more to come on that state as well. The big positive that I want to finish on this slide is that the whole, what we call command and control infrastructure apparatus of a ransomware called Lockbit. Hopefully you've heard of Lockbit and seen them in the news. Very, very prolific pro-Russian ransomware outfit. They've been operating for a number of years. Were actually taken offline through a coordinated activity between the NCA, the FBI, Europol, and our other coalition international police agencies who actually have taken down their infrastructure. And what's quite interesting is not only have they taken that infrastructure offline and obviously countered that threat for now, I will come back to that, but they actually got access to a lot of their source data that the threat actor uses, but more importantly, the modus operandi of how that threat actor works. And they are repurposing that, and they are going to start sharing that information. And that's good for a multitude of reasons. One, as a consultancy, we can look at that, we can understand the capabilities, the intent, the motivations of these threat actors to help counter those threats and work with our client base. But also, because that information will be publicly available, it arguably makes defenses better. So organizations, which I encourage you to sort of look at when they start sharing this information, is to look at it to see, how are these agencies or actors been actually working. But just circling back, I say they've taken them down for now. Lockbit was so big, they had a lot of funding, they made a lot of money, they're actually running like an organization. It's probably only a number of months before they come back online. And obviously there will be Lockbit, version 2.0 or a different name. But as I say, it is a cat and mouse activity. But they're just sort of three things that I just wanted to tease out in terms of how, cyber presents itself uniquely. If I could have the next slide, please, Jonathan, thank you. So I just wanted to quickly cover until I go into other areas of the threat landscape itself. The hot potatoes, or the key areas of interest at the moment for threat actors, is supply chain and artificial intelligence. So in terms of supply chain, so the reason the threat actors like it is it's still the soft underbelly of a lot of organizations. Organizations themselves are investing a lot of money in cyber defense, and they are becoming a hard target. Obviously there's still weaknesses, but they're a harder target. And the key thing to remember is threat actors like the path of least resistance. They don't want to work hard. They don't want to be cool. They don't want to sweat, and they want the path of least resistance. They want to put the least effort in to get the most fiscal reward that they can. And in the past year, probably 12 to 18 months, there has been a notable increase in the frequency of attacks and the actual sophistication of attacks or the breaches that we have across the client base ourselves. And those are up to 65% of those attacks that we are involved with, as in helping organizations post-breach or post-response, is those attacks have originated in their supply chains or third-party trading partners. And again, if you look at incidents resulting from MOVE-IT or zero-day vulnerabilities, or even the CTS legal attack, which is quite notable in the last couple of months, again, it's all attacks originating from the supply chain. And the supply chain is giving easy access into a lot of organizations where these organizations are building their defenses. If you take like the armadillo model, it's a nice crunchy outside, but once you get into organizations, it's soft and squidgy. The supply chain allows you access to that soft and squidgy sort of perspective. And again, threat actors are aware of this, and they are exploiting supply chains because it is that soft underbelly. And the other part, coming back to, you know, they want the path of least resistance, they don't want to work hard, is if they compromise a supply chain or a third party, they compromise one to access many. And that is actually proving very rewarding for a lot of ransomware groups or organized crime groups that we respond to. And again, it's maximizing that impact. I will circle back to supply chain and some of the levers that these threat actors are pulling in some coming slides, but I just wanted to sort of set the headline at the moment. Now, imagine AI is obviously very interesting, and hopefully this will generate some questions. But AI does have good connotations, intentions, but at the same time, we're seeing it used more and more and more for the wrong, you know, in various reasons. And from what we're seeing, cyber attacks now are absolutely increasingly leveraging AI in various ways to enhance the effectiveness and sophistication of their attacks. And some of the common methods that I see, or some of the conversations that we have across my teams and with clients, is from an automated malware nature. You know, they're using AI now to generate algorithms to automatically generate new variants of malware on the fly. So they will see an organization, they will get a view of what defensive technologies that organization's using. They will then plug that into their own iterative versions of AI to actually produce their own malware to use within those environments based on what they're seeing or how that organization is defending itself. And that is actually taking what would normally take hours to days to develop down to minutes. And that's quite scary. And I'll circle back to that in a couple of slides' time. The other big area we're seeing artificial intelligence being used is in intelligent phishing. So you have targeted phishing and spear phishing, but I'm actually calling it intelligent phishing now. So they're using AI to craft more convincing phishing emails by analyzing vast amounts of data on that organization, or from using social media posts from, or you know, the individuals of that organization, and actually enabling them to prioritize and personalize their messages on a much better basis. So a lot of organizations, or organized crime groups, shall I say, you know, English is not always a first language. And if we look at a lot of attacks, it's like US-based or English-based language. AI helps them in that regard as well. So a simple stat for you at the moment, if we look at some of the big like Lockbit organizations that before they were taken down, it would on average take them 14 to 16 hours to generate a targeted spear phishing campaign. With AI, we've seen that down to 5 to 6 minutes to generate a targeted phishing email. So there are errors in it, but again, it's accelerating their capability and how they can react to what organizations are actually doing. But more importantly, when they do coerce an individual and have a correspondence or a communication with that individual, it allows them to respond much quicker and a much more informed basis. Again, hopefully having that individual, you know, carry out actions on their behalf through coercion. The other area of significance for AI is around the evasion of security defenses. Now, I've alluded to it that, you know, they use AI to respond to generate malware on the fly based on how organizations are defending themselves. But the AI use allows them to develop various techniques to bypass a lot of security measures, such as firewalls or IDS, as in intrusion detection systems, by them being able to adapt, as I say, their attack strategies based on the real-time feedback of what they're getting from probing various infrastructures or organizations themselves. So again, it's accelerating their capability in terms of the time taken to actually, you know, respond or exploit a vulnerability they find. And I suppose the key part is overall, the integration of AI into cyber attacks is only going to escalate. I mean, I will talk about AGI at the end, probably, if we can, Jonathan, as in artificial general intelligence. You know, that is arguably the aware artificial intelligence. I will come on to that at the end. But again, if that happens, to me, that's like equivalent of the, you know, the evolution of the atomic bomb, you know, and I will circle back to that at the end. But as I say, I just wanted to touch on, you know, the two sort of threat areas, the areas of interest that threat actors are looking at the moment. Could I have the next slide, please, Jonathan? Now, I just wanted to concentrate, if I may, there's a lot of lexicon, there's a lot of snake oil when you speak to consultancies about, you know, what terminology should you use to understand the threat landscape or the threat actors themselves. And one of the things I just wanted to sort of impart is I think it's best if everyone accepts that, you know, in the main, there are 4 levels of sophistication of threat actor. Everyone says like at the lowest, you've got script kiddies. I find the term script kiddie quite offensive. because, you know, they're not script kidders, they're just low sophisticated actors. They're individuals learning their trade craft, or they're watching YouTube to try and do things, but they still have a level of sophistication. And obviously you have activists, organized crime, and nation states. And you can see the bullets at the bottom there is just to give you an idea of their motivations or an intent or their objectives. Now, hopefully, again, this should be language that you've heard, but I think in the main, we should boil it down to sort of 4 main sort of threat actor groups. And if I could have the next slide, please, Jonathan. And one of the things I just wanted to do, if you can just click again, is just, okay, let's put these in a level of sophistication. So if we move left to right, you've got the lowest level of sophistication, moving up to the nation state, arguably have the most, you know, capability and the most sort of intent, objectives, and resourcing or funding behind them. Now, I just want to challenge the perceived perception of these threat actor groups based on to what we see today, based on the, you know, the true ground truth of the cyber threat landscape. So what you can see from the yellowy / orangey sort of amber box here is the perception is that you'll see a lot more activity, or there is a lot more activity at the lower end of sophistication level. Now, yes, that is true, but that's for a number of reasons. So if you take the lower sophistication threat actor groups, they're learning their tradecraft. They are learning, they are trying things. They don't care if they get caught. They don't care if anyone can detect or see it. They're learning their tradecraft and they want to develop their skills and tool sets. Where if you move up, obviously up the chain into nation state, they're about low and slow. They don't want to get caught. It's about anonymity. They do not want to be detected or attribution back to them. So naturally, you think there's a lot level activity, but however, we just see less of it because obviously they hide. That's their tradecraft. And if I could have the next click, please. Now, what it actually means, and this is a true perception, arguably, is that, you know, nation states have a lot more impact capability because they have higher end tools, techniques, and procedures. They put a lot more resourcing, a lot more funding into their capability, and obviously they're hard hitting, because nation state is a nation state capability. But the next sort of click here is what we're actually seeing in reality, and I will step into this here. So what you can see from the white box here is that the most impact today, from what we see, not only from a detection perspective, but what we see from a forensic reversing capability to do when we go and work with clients that have had a cyber attack or they've had an event, is that organized crime groups and hacktivists have access to nation state tools. And there's a multitude of reasons for this. If I could just have the next click, please, Jonathan. So we call it sort of TTP, as in tools, techniques, and procedures, the proliferation. And what we mean by proliferation is how long does it take for nation state capability to cascade through that food chain into the lower end activity. Now, if we went back probably two to 3 years, that journey would arguably 18 months plus. You know, nation states would use the tools, they would be discovered, there'd be reverse engineering, various government websites or agencies would disclose that, and obviously you'd get critical vulnerabilities come out another sort of 0 days, and we'd be able to reverse that capability. But what we're seeing of late, probably in the last probably 12 months, is that 2-year journey from those tools at nation state taking to work their way down the lower end sophistication sort of levels is now minutes to hours. And the reasons for that is nation states, specifically after the Russian-Ukraine conflict, they are actively sharing their tools and they are making their tools available. So you can go and buy them on dark and deep web. And they range from $50 up to, you know, tens of thousands of dollars based on, you know, what you want the tool to do. And also AI is accelerating that capability. So what it's actually doing is it's lowering what I call the noddy bar, the bar to entry to conduct cyber activity. And this is why you're seeing in the organized crime group area quite a spike in terms not only activity, but capability as well, because you can rent these tools. Ransomware as a service is a prime example. It's a business. You can go and hire these threat actors that are arguably nation state, state proxy loaned actors to conduct attacks on your behalf. All you have to do is pay them a percentage of the reward you get from the attack itself. But as I say, and that's why we're getting that spike in terms of activity. So in reality, we're seeing a lot more impact and activity in the organized crime level and what we call internet access brokers, which I'll come on to again in a few more slides. But if I could just have the next slide, please, Jonathan. So more of a summary slide. So the key findings is the internet is still bad. As I say, the bar to entry to undertake cyber attacks is absolutely dropping, and a lot more organized crime groups or criminal-based groups who want fiscal reward are moving into the cyber arena because they can buy this capability. And again, they're making a lot of money out of it because attacks are unfortunately still successful, and that is only accelerating. You have initial access brokers, as I spoke to. So these are more of a spin-off of the big outfits like Lockbit, where they actually created another sort of business model where these internet access brokers, all they're there to do is find weak targets, gain access into that organization, establish a foothold or persistence. They then sell that access on. And again, you can buy that access on the dark and deep web, ranging from $5, anything obviously north to tens of thousands of dollars based on level of access it gives you. And again, you can even buy the tools that they recommend to allow you to conduct a successful attack. Supply chain, as I said, still a soft underbelly. It's one to many. And the other part I probably should have mentioned there is that second bullet. So what the threat actors are actually doing now is they're actually targeting supply chains or organizations by the services they consume. And that goes back to what I said. It's the compromise one to compromise many. So again, look at a service that is consumed by many with the hope that it will cascade, across multiple chains itself. And in ransomware, it is still ransomware. It's not going away. It's only going to get worse, unfortunately. Again, it's very easily monetized. It makes a lot of money. Ransomware as a service is absolutely a thing. It makes organized crime groups a lot of money, as well as other criminal groups moving into that space as well. And the other part to tease out there is there is a rise in double and triple extortion. Now, that might be language that some of you may not have heard, but I just want to quickly explain that. So in the strictest sense, a ransomware is obviously they would encrypt something. They would then issue a ransom to say, right, if you want your data back or access back to your systems, you need to pay X amount of dollars or pounds to get access back. Now, organizations are paying ransomware, but they want to expedite and put more leverage on organizations to actually pay a ransom now. And so what we're seeing of late is the introduction of double and the triple extortion. So basically it's more levers that the threat actors are pulling. So double extortion is where they gain access to an organization. Not only will they look to lock you out your systems or encrypt data, they will steal your data first. So if you don't pay a ransom, not only will you not get access to your data back, but they will then publish or release that data in the wild. So that's the two levels, that's the double extortion. Now, in the last 6 months, we've seen triple extortion rise. So it builds on double extortion, so it's access and data leakage, but they're actually looking at what other organizations, what entities, what other supply chains are connected to those organizations, then using those trusted connections to then move into that organization's supply chain. They will then look to ransomware that supply chain as well and extort on a double or triple extortion basis as well. So they're actually using this. And where they're using this as well on a wider footing is the ransomware agencies that we see organized crime groups, they're actually looking at returns like Companies House now to see what the balance sheets look like. They will then look at those balance sheets to set a realistic ransomware model or ransomware demand using that organization's balance sheet. And we've seen that in the correspondence with organizations as well. So the threat actor will use their own Companies House returns to say, we can see you've got X amount of funds, we want 1% of that as a ransomware. And obviously that's where the negotiation then starts. Again, quite a big shift change that we're seeing. And then the other part, sort of key findings, as I say, so threat actors are lazy. They want to take the path of least resistance. They don't want to get caught per se, but they just want to exert the lowest level of effort. And unfortunately, bad patching, and scanning, vulnerability management, password management, the cyber hygiene, the essentials are still allowing, successful attacks. And that's what the threat actors are exploiting on a daily basis.
Just to let everyone know, we've got about 10 or 15 minutes until we'll be moving to questions. So if you do have any, please post those within the question box. So Anthony, I'll move you on to the next slide.
Yeah, thank you. I will speed up. Thank you. Next.
No, you're absolutely fine. We've got plenty of time left.
Okay. So the other part, as I say, just building on what do we see, the organizations get wrong, as in, why are threat actors having success. Hopefully you can see the picture as a classic example. You know, your security measures look good, however, there's a way around them. And, you know, the main point, adversaries are unfortunately getting better. You know, I would say at best, we're probably from a defensive perspective, we're probably 2 months behind what threat actors are doing in terms of their capability to how we're deploying defenses. You know, it's probably a 2-month gap. And obviously, we're only as good as the last known attack or what we know about their tools, techniques, and procedures. There's still an absolute over-reliance on technology. Unfortunately, organizations still think that a shiny box is a solution, and that is at the demise of people and process. The amount of organizations that we work with, like we've got all the, you know, so we've got all these good technologies, unfortunately just don't have the people, the processes to use that technology in a way that it's designed. And it's probably fair to say that a lot of defensive individuals or teams within organizations have all these tools, but they're drinking information through a fire hose. It's just too much is inundated. They just don't have the proper investment in the people and process side. And that sort of moves on to, like, you know, security teams. They have little empowerment. Security is still seen as a cost within an organization. It is a cost, but at the same time is a cost that you need to pay and obviously address in terms of budgets to keep the lights on. You know, so it's not about tick box, you know, as in compliance. It's about security must make sense. It's about the defense model. You know, do you have a security posture that commensurates your threat profile? You need to understand your threat landscape and have a security posture that's commensurate to that, or capabilities that allow you to respond to that. The other part that we see is obviously the race to the cloud is still a fashion statement for a lot of organizations, dare I say it. And what we see, you know, what they're moving or what they currently have or what they want to move to the cloud is not correct. So they're just moving rubbish from point A to point B. And at that point, it actually creates 2 attack surfaces of rubbish that the threat actors can then exploit. So it's about understanding what you're trying to do, what's critical, do you ring fence it, do you need to move it, do you need it, where's your data? It's all those good conversations and considerations. So it's not just about moving A to B, it's about understanding what you're moving, how you need to move it. And then, as I say, the building blocks, the security fundamentals, they're still wanting in a lot of areas. Now, the building blocks, or, you know, cyber essentials or cyber hygiene, it's not easy. That's completely acceptable, but there are things that need to happen in that space to actually increase security postures. And again, threat actors know this is what they exploit, and that's why they are having success. Have the next slide, please, Jonathan. So you've probably heard of a multitude of different attack vectors, but I just wanted to sort of bring up the 5. There are other attack vectors, but these are the most common that we see within a lot of our clients or events that we're involved with, obviously, or from an intelligence gathering perspective. Social engineering is probably arguably still 75% of the main vector for attacks. It's exploiting the human weakness, and the weakness they want to exploit there in the human is humans naturally want to help. That's what they exploit. It's about coercing that individual to do something on their behalf. Click on an email, click on a link, visit a website, you know, it's also all that nature. So I'd say that's probably about 75% of how threat actors get into organizations. And again, phishing is very clever, it's very good, and they're only getting better at phishing, especially with like the introduction of AI, again, allows them to adapt their approach on the fly a lot quicker. You're always going to have 0 days or 1 days or known critical vulnerabilities. You know, threat actors monitor these just as we monitor to see what Microsoft are putting out or other providers. Threat actors do exactly the same. And they know that you can't just deploy a patch. You have to understand what it's done. Is it going to have any secondary or third impacts? So they like to exploit that window from the time a vulnerability is reported to, you know, the time it takes an organization to respond or sort of patch their system. So they exploit that as well. Leaked and stolen credentials is still quite prolific. You'll be surprised on how much, or maybe not surprised on how much organizations actually bleed into a digital footprint. Again, they look for this, they look for credentials in the wild, or, you know, servers or Amazon buckets or E3 buckets that are hanging on the internet, etc. They look at that, they obviously then use those credentials. And again, that's a prime hotspot for them to look at. And third-party dependencies. So it comes back to the supply chain, the soft underbelly. As I say, from the attacks that we've been involved, from the attacks that we've responded to 65% of those successful attacks have originated in supply chain, as I say, so quite prolific, as I say. And then insider recruitment. For the higher end, organised crime groups are still not only blackmailing but coercing individuals through money or rewards to give them access. I can't name the organisation, but quite a big organisation. I'm sure you can figure out if you looked in the news the last couple of months. They had insider access, and that individual was paid £25,000 to give their local admin account, and that individual did it. £25,000, a lot of money, and that was actually paid to that individual. So organised crime groups are paying money, and it's probably worth saying that £25,000 to organised crime group is nothing. It's like you or I spending £1, if that. So they do throw a lot of money behind sort of coercing individuals, and we are seeing that. If I could go to the next slide, please. So as I said, I try to leave on a bit of a positive, apologise, it is doom and gloom, but some of the things that you can do, and this isn't only from a technology base or footprint, but it's about understanding your capabilities, understanding your risk appetite and your risk tolerance. And if you can imagine those two lines, it should be your resilience capabilities should work between those two lines. So you have your appetite here and your tolerance here, your resilience should work between those. And that's what you want to test. And obviously that's with good stress testing, penetration testing, vulnerability scanning, red teaming, and obviously stuff of that nature. But it's understanding your capabilities against your risk appetite and say, do your resilience capabilities work between those two margins? Again, please treat security or anything or cybersecurity or resilience as a journey. It's not a destination. It's not about compliance tick box. It's about stress testing. It's about aligning to a framework, whether you put NIST or ISO. It's about picking a framework and running with it, and about prioritizing what's important to you and to your organization and understanding what that is. And again, once you've done that, then making sure that the rest of your defense model sort of aligns to those frameworks that you pick. And again, that moves into culture. It's not about shiny boxes, as I say, it's not just technology. It's about understanding the people and process. You need to change the culture in organizations. As I say, again, it's not just compliance, it's about focus on cyber defense and the culture, which will then hopefully obviously drive that resilience across your organization. Also focus on supply chain, as I say. And that's about holding your supply chain, your third and fourth and fifth parties, to the same level of scrutiny that you hold yourself. So how do you seek assurance from them? What level of testing or assurance or measures are you putting in place to give you that warm, fuzzy feeling that they're not going to be your downfall? Now, if they do become compromised, how can you cut them off? What do you do to respond? Again, it's understand your resilience capabilities, your business crisis or business continuity capabilities, exercising against those scenarios. And then continuous controls, monitoring, assurance. So that's the theme across all these. That's good testing. How do you do a verify and assure model? So you're doing your verification, whether that's a questionnaire, compliance, or tick box approach. You've again got the assure model. So how are you actually stress testing all those areas, be it from your own controls to your supply chain as well? But again, that should be threat-led. Understanding your threat landscape that you're working, understand the sort of threats that are present to you, and then making sure that you are responding or have a security posture and capability to respond to that. And the last thing is, again, this is the bread and butter for Insignia. It's about training, developing muscle memory. You must keep testing. You've got to stress test yourself. We've got to move away from, we've got a compliance exercise. We've got policies and processes. It's about actually stress testing those to make sure that they do work, they're fit for purpose, but also that they don't, confine you down a certain track that wouldn't work. So again, it's about stress testing, as I say, and making sure that they work. And I believe that's me, Jonathan.
Anthony, thank you. Insightful and scary as always. We do, unsurprisingly, have a handful of questions already. So if I can put those to you. So the first one, Anthony, is from Sue, who says, is there a different level of security or preparation required to offset the risk of double or triple extortion?
So no, it is a short answer. It's about understanding, obviously, your capability and what you can do. Are you ransomware ready, I suppose is what I'm saying. Are you doing exercises, not only from a people and process perspective, but from a technology perspective as well, to understand how do you respond to ransomware. But I suppose there is a nuance to the triple and the double and triple extortion, is specifically in the triple one, understanding your supply chain. Who are your critical providers? What trusted connections do you have? Is about mapping your estate and your third and fourth parties and understanding, do you have a relationship with them? Do you have a communications channel with that organization? But more importantly, understanding what level of assurance do you have that you, as I say, you can cut those channels off. And as I say, the other part with that communication channel, if you do have an incident and they're affected, can you work with them? Are they a trusted partner? You know, can you work with them in confidence, I suppose, because you need to, if you do become a victim of that scenario or an event, you need to control that very, very quickly. So how do you work with that supplier or that supply chain very, very quickly?
Would you consider involving critical suppliers in your exercising?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So I would say yes, when you're ready to. So it's not about running before you can walk. It's about, as I say, building up to that sort of exercising, you know, because to be truthful, that is a very resource heavy sort of test or scenario. But it's to make sure that you plan it on the right footing, where you're both aligned on the objectives and you've got an agreed outcome. You do work with those sort of supply chains. But ultimately, yes.
Okay. Question from Steve. Operational resilience and business continuity planning focuses on the weakest point, which is often a third party, and even considering downstream fourth and fifth suppliers. Given the interaction between cybersecurity and business continuity and resilience planning, how have you seen clients address this from these diverging angles?
So it goes back to your previous point. What we're seeing with the more mature clients, they're actually involving their supply chains in their crisis planning and their crisis exercising now. And they're actually, dare I say it, they're moving away from the good old doorstops of business continuity plans and BCPs. They're actually having a more agile approach, which is probably more swim lane and probably higher level, that gives these organizations the freedom to respond to a changing scenario. So they concentrate on the impact, not the cause. That's the biggest shift change that we're seeing.
Thank you. Mark has a question here that I was going to put if no one else did. Mark says, Anthony mentioned AGI. Can you please expand on this?
Yeah. So I can't see any questions. So AGI is basically when AI is going to become aware. You know, it's artificial general intelligence. And what that means is it should be able to pass the Turing test. Now, the Turing test, sorry if you already know this, is basically, it's what was originally called the imitation game for Alan Turing. I think it was 1950 or something of that nature. And basically, it's a test that will test the machine's ability to exhibit intelligence behavior equivalent to or indistinguishable to a human. So you could interact with it and you wouldn't know whether you're talking to, say, a computer or an individual. Now, I think when that happens, it is absolutely going to change the threat landscape for the worse, unfortunately. If you remember what I said, I think I said it earlier, to me, that's equivalent of the evolution of the atomic bomb. It's actually going to change things. And the reason I say that, there's a lot of rumors going in various chat forums and darker deep web at the moment. That Open AI, which is obviously the chat GBT, already have AGI. And they already have it breaking our most complicated encryption, which is, I don't want to go too technical, but it's 196 AES. That's the most advanced, arguably, encryption that we've got at the moment. And it's purported to be able to break that in seconds and read it back to the user. That is just very, very scary. Again, it could be fear mongering, but there's never smoke without fire. And that's the sort of thing. Now, the other part with AI is you've got two parts to it. You've got the LLM angle, which is the large language model, which is like ChatGPT or Grok AI, which is Elon Musk's open source equivalent. Now, what threat actors have done and good developers have done is created something called Deviant AI. and that's specifically made for code development and writing code. And the concern with that is because it's open source, a threat actor can take that and host it locally, which means it's not internet connected and it's completely isolated. It's only on their machine. Now, what they can do is take all the safe controls off of that. For example, if you went to ChatGPT and said, tell me how to make a bomb, it wouldn't tell you. But what they can do with the Deviant and the open source one, especially with Grok, and thanks to Elon Musk, is they can take those safety protocols away. So what threat actors are actually doing is using that to generate their own malware, their own text-based development. And for example, Deviant AI, you can give it 5 questions, and as I say, it would generate a phishing campaign in under 5 minutes, where that would typically take, as I said, the threat actor up to probably 14 to 16 hours. But the other part of that, you can actually tell it to develop code for you. So it will write the code, it will bug hunt the code, and it will then re-release the code and even deploy it for you. So again, what took you hours is now just taking minutes. And that's the scary side of what we're seeing. And again, AI is raising what I call that, it's lowering the noddy bar. It's giving threat actors access to capability they wouldn't had. So the skill is you've still got to know how to use AI, but once you learn that and how to ask it questions, how to build in questions, it's giving you capability that you just wouldn't had. But as I say, the other part, the scary part is, yeah, if the rumors are true and it comes around, AGI, I think, yeah, it's going to be quite scary because it will change overnight how we defend. It will completely undo our defensive strategy, defensive approach, because it will do a targeting attack and everything in one, and it will do it in nanoseconds to seconds. I just don't know how you respond to that at the moment.
So are we winning or losing the war against the cyber attackers, and how do we give ourselves a better chance of winning the war? So
it's cat and mouse. As I say, we are a couple of months behind, but there are good practices, there are good skills. I would say where we can be better is communication, sharing information. Unfortunately, a lot of organizations who do fall victim of cyber attacks, they still don't want to come too clean. I understand that there's legal precedents and stuff. I do appreciate that. But at the same time, we need to move together as a herd. And the only way you can do that is by sharing information. What did we get wrong? How did we respond? What can the other organizations do? How can we be collectively sort of tough and hardened? It's just some organizations, and again, governments, it's take, but not give too much back, because it could be airing your dirty laundry. But as I say, it comes down to communication, information sharing.
So absolutely, what can we do to help each other? If we turn the coin over and say, from a very selfish point of view, in the same way that we, want people not to burgle our house, but to burgle someone else's, so we put the alarms on and the posts at the gate. What are the most important things that people should be doing to make them a less easy, less obvious, less attractive target?
So it'd be things like we call active surface management. So attack surface management, sorry. So about understanding how you digitally present from a technology perspective. Yeah. Are you presenting any low-hanging fruit that a threat actor would, it'd raise their curiosity. So you want to present as a harder target. As I said, threat actors are lazy. If they see that you've got a bit of a harder exterior, they will look at elsewhere. They want to go for the 3-legged wildebeest at the watering hole. So probably what I'm saying is, move to the middle of the pack. Don't be the outlier, but don't be the top end as well, because obviously that's mega money. But as I say, it's about understanding how you present. Are you presenting low-hanging fruit? And again, that's from people, process, and technology. So not just a technology perspective, what's presenting. Are you presenting vulnerable? But what do your staff, what do your colleagues share on social media? Are they oversharing? Are they disclosing your technologies? Are they disclosing your strategy? So again, it's all information that the threat actor is used for. So it's just about making yourself a harder target. And dare I say it, you want to be slightly better than the rest, so they look at the others and not you.
Yeah. Okay, a couple more questions from the audience. Would involving outside specialist cyber threat experts, such as UK National Cybersecurity Centre or CrowdStrike, help in a real crisis for a multinational?
Yes, I would say government, I don't want to say the wrong thing, is a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag response. It depends on whether you're critical national infrastructure or there's a level of interest if there's an attribution to a threat actor. I will leave that there if I may, but I say it's a different response. In terms of CrowdStrike, absolutely. If you've got those sort of budgets, absolutely. CrowdStrike, I mean, I'm very software agnostic, but CrowdStrike is a very good tool. I'm not endorsing that, but it is a very good tool. And the reason I say that is it makes our testers sweat very hard. But the same as any tool, it's got to be used, deployed, and maintained correctly. It's not just having that technology, it's about how you deploy it. But yes, it is a very good tool. So, CrowdStrike, there are other tools available. Defender's very good, Elastic, very, very good, but it's about maintaining those and using those correctly. But I'd say what it comes back to is how you test those tools, capabilities, and technologies that you have to make sure that they're actually working. But test them across people, process, and technology. It's not just the technology, it's the people using it and how you gain information from those technologies as well.
Just on the point about government and National Cybersecurity Centre, and again, I'm not casting aspersions here, all I would put across is a general point, and this applies to other crisis types as well. My advice would always be never rely on or outsource responsibility for responding to your crisis to any third party. There are good experts, there are good advisors, of course there are, but nobody has as much interest in protecting your organization, your business, your reputation than you do. So do be very careful about, completely trusting any third party to protect or respond to a crisis.
Just one other thing, if I may. So the other thing that we see is cyber insurance. Again, back to your point, you can't offload accountability. But so a lot of organizations that we see do have good cyber insurance policies. It puts boots on the ground when they need it, but they've never tested the capability before they've needed it. And a lot of organizations have actually pulled the trigger. They've invocated their cyber policy, but they're not forensically ready. As in, the insurance provision has put experts on the ground, but they can't do anything in that client's environment or estate, unfortunately, because they haven't tested that those individuals or experts, if they're needed, can actually work and do what they need to do within that client's infrastructure. So again, it goes back to testing. And a good insurance policy or cyber insurance policy should give you a facility of at least once a year to exercise the level of cover and the expertise that you would have. And again, it's about testing that to make sure, God forbid you need it, you can actually use that expertise that they would push your way.
Yeah, and I mean, thank you for that segue in, Anthony, just talking about exercising again, where we are seeing a lot of interest and a lot of value is in the exercising of the senior leadership teams in tandem with the technical teams. Often we come across clients who actually have invested heavily in the technological capability and the experts from organizations like Nettitude on penetration testing, etc. But the people that haven't been rehearsed are the senior leaders, and success in responding to a cyber crisis is absolutely having the technical capability to respond, but also having leaders that understand the environment in which they're operating, understand the kind of decisions they might need to make, understanding the ramifications of some of those decisions, and also, of course, the communication that they might need to be responsible for. So, when thinking about exercising, yes, do your testing from a technical point of view, that must happen, but make sure that your leadership teams are also exercised. Anthony, I've got one remaining question from the audience, and then we've got 5 minutes of housekeeping at the end. The final question is, SMEs often don't have the same resources as larger organizations. Do you have 2 or 3 key tips as to how SMEs should prepare?
As in terms for ransom, any context cyber threat, or?
I think just generally, if you're a smaller organization, maybe with, I don't know, 50 employees or even fewer, you're maybe 20 million turnover, what would be some of the first things you should be doing to protect yourself?
So I would say, if not already, it's about picking a framework to align to, as I said, to like NIST or ISO. Again, it's not always about achieving that certification, but it's about aligning to a framework to give you a direction of travel to work to someone can align yourself on that journey. I would take it back to basics, understanding or doing a discovery exercise, what's critical to yourself, and then saying, okay, we do have limited budgets. Everyone has limited resource, limited budgets. What do you need to concentrate on? What's critical to you? What do you need to keep the lights on, and focusing your efforts on there? Now, that's not an easy thing. I fully appreciate that, but you've got to start somewhere. And it'll be about ring fencing those critical assets that are important to you. You know, as a retailer, it could be, I just need to put beans on the shelf. I don't need to worry about forensically recovering. As long as I've got a minimum level of standard, I can put beans on the shelf. Again, it's understanding what's critical to you. And again, the discovery exercise should go across data, technology as well. What's important to maintain those critical functions? And again, as I say, ring fencing that. Once you get to a point where you're happy that you think you've got the right sort of things that are critical you to keep the lights on, I would then look at some sort of low-level testing, arguably moving into a stress testing perspective to say your plans, processes, and assumptions, do they ring true in the moment of need? So again, it's just that journey, but I do appreciate it is expensive to get outside expertise. But I would say if you do have providers, now I'm not recommending LRQA Nettitude, but speak to them. I think if you actually engage with them and say, look, we want a strategic direction of travel, we might need a strategic partner in this, there's things that can be done. I would steer away from things like saying, oh yeah, a provider saying, oh yeah, you need a red team, that's £300,000. Arguably you don't, because that's a very expensive, nice to have at that point. It's like, no, what can you do with me? This is what I'm trying to do. It's just having that consultative approach or selling angle. But that would be my advice.
Anthony, thank you very much. As I say, incredibly insightful. The great thing with Anthony is you are hearing insights from someone who literally is on the front line and seeing what is happening right now. So if anyone wants further information from Anthony or have any questions that they didn't ask on the call, you can see Anthony's email address there. I'm now just going to move into 2 minutes of other upcoming opportunities and the next webinar. Firstly, to say that in our follow-up email to this webinar, there'll be a link to a very short, simple cyber crisis preparedness scorecard. It focuses kind of at that strategic leadership level. If you'd like a quick snapshot of how cyber crisis proof you are, please complete the questionnaire. But more than that, I'd love the people on this call to be a bit of a focus group. We've just launched this questionnaire, so even if you're not massively interested, please do take the test and give us any feedback on it. I wanted to give you a heads up on our next webinar. We've had 2 technologically focused webinars over the last couple of months. The last webinar was on AI and today on cybersecurity. Next month, we're going to take a look at people. I saw Sean Cunningham from Vestas, they're a renewable energy company, speak at the recent Crisis Minds conference where I was speaking too, and he was talking about both how to get the best out of your crisis management team, how to make them really effective under pressure, and also how to chair and lead a crisis management team effectively. And it really resonated with me. The graphic on the right, I'm just going to leave it there because that was a concept that Sean talked about that I'm hoping he's going to talk about when we meet next month. But there's some really interesting insights there. And ultimately, crisis management, like everything in life, is about people, what they do and say when under pressure. And I think you'll find Sean's perspective really interesting. So do put that date in your diary. Finally, if there's anything that Insignia or myself personally can help you with, you can scan and get details there to contact us. We do really appreciate you enjoying these. Sorry, we do really appreciate you joining and hopefully also enjoying these webinars. It's great to have you on board. As I say, if you do have any questions for me or for Anthony, please do let us know. Otherwise, thanks once more to Anthony for sparing his time. Thank you to everyone for joining us, and I wish you a peaceful and crisis-free afternoon. Many thanks, everyone.
Thank you.